Gabriel's Gospel Grace, changing lives and kingdom building one stone at a time.
Well, hello and good morning to you, and welcome to another Motivational Monday. So today's topic is about control. What can we control, and how do we regain control in our lives? So the obvious is that we have people in the world who seize control. People often get accused of being control freaks. People that seem to like order out of chaos and like to have things a particular way. Now, if I'm honest, from my experience, and this includes me, sometimes we have to become more organised. And what you find is people start to build routines and regiments and timetables. And that's something I'll be encouraging as we go forward on here. But to others, it can seem very rigid. But actually, it's a form of that person regaining and staying in control. Because if we don't, our lives become chaos. And not many people can keep track of a particular thought and hold it through the whole day, and not successfully follow through on it, at least. So the thing is, when it comes to control, though, this also leads to potential depression, because if things become out of our control, then we feel a sense of despair, possibly anxiety, and most likely we can't regain that control. Not feeling like you have control is probably the biggest cause of fear. Fear, as we've talked about many times, is a great motivator, but it is a control mechanism. So this episode is looking at control, not so much from a fear perspective, but just exactly what is it and how can we possess it. So control, really, when you think about it, it's simply a case of having some sort of control. That keeps being the word. I need a better word. Let's articulate this better. It's having an influence of change over a particular circumstance or situation. And in most cases, we find our lives are kind of like someone described this recently as it feels like being in a TV episode where everything's happening around you and we constantly have to adapt. And I think that is the case. We have to adapt to all the situations in our lives. But sometimes adaptation results in us getting to the end of the day and not achieving anything. More importantly, if we were on a particular journey, we've now strayed way off our track. So we do need to have a sense of control. Now, often that can be found in purpose. Purpose gives us a motivation to move forward. And with that motivation, we take control of the elements within that. But that's what I want to talk about today, control elements. Because when we look at anything in our lives, we can break it down into elements. So what I want to define in this particular episode is, what do we or don't we have control of in our lives? And we can break these down into elements. So let's take any scenario. Let's take the story of we just woke up this morning and we're about to get out of bed. Now, do we simply go with the flow? Get out on the left side, get out on the right side, get out at the bottom of the bed, put on our clothes, don't put on our clothes. You know, there's no right or wrong answer, but I'm guessing most of you will have some sort of routine or pattern. And most of them patterns will have been formed by either circumstances, because that's what you were taught, or because it's just what's efficient. And I think for those of us who are quite good at progressing ourselves forward in life, we always look at improving on what works and what doesn't. So often a routine might have served us well for years, but something's changed in our routine. For example, at one time we used to have to set our alarm clocks. Now we don't have that. We've probably got a phone app that'll automatically wake us up, or we've got something that vibrates. So things have moved on. Technology's moved on. But we do have control at when we wake up and how we wake up. One example is I used to always use music. I used to have a stereo system where I could actually set that timer to wake me up in the morning. And I realised quite quickly having the radio come on could set me in a bad mood for the day. Depends on what was on. So I flipped it and had CDs, and I'd always choose a CD that would give me that motivational feeling in the morning, something I could wake up to that wasn't too heavy, at the same time not too passive that I'm going to fall back to sleep. So when we look at this, every situation has an element of control in it. And that's what we need to identify. We need to break down what we have control of. Now I'm going to make this simple for us, because everything external, and I mean the physical reality around us, and from a society point of view, they're all external factors that we have influence over, but we don't actually have control. We're not the people in control. And even people in control have things like finances and laws and other things above that that often have elements of control. So let's focus on what we do have control over. And what we do have control over is what is within us. So that includes our mind, our emotions, our feelings, and our motivations. Things we don't have control over include such as the weather, perhaps the traffic on our way to work in the morning, what song will be next on the radio, and possibly where exactly are the directions we're going to take tomorrow, because there's not enough information in front of us at that point to know. So externally, and this is basically the main task for today, everything that comes up in your day, recognize how much control you have. Recognize also what is external and what's internal. Now, as I said, what we do have control over is the internal. So I had someone recently telling me about a situation, a scenario where they've had quite a serious fallout with someone in their lives. And I think they're both at an impasse where they don't want to talk to each other and they have kind of blocked each other. And I've said, well, we can change the circumstances by taking control of a situation. Now, to take control of a situation is not simple. Think about it. There's too many external parameters. But the way we can best take control of it is controlling our reaction, understanding our emotions, and understanding exactly what we can do to either minimize or maximize the outcome. Not from our own perspective, but from the other person's perspective. So here's a scenario. I've suggested that this person go to the person's house and take a gift. It could be flowers, could be a box of chocolates, it could be anything. Now that would be absolutely unexpected. It's certainly not within their current relationship dynamic. Now when that person comes to the door, there's obviously going to be two options. One is they simply tell them where to go, or the other is simply be available and ready to hear what they've got to say. And I've said, right or wrong, that's a circumstance of the past and it's also a perspective. That's not important now. What's important is moving forward. So when that person opens the door, offer the gift and apologise, because this is a bigger battle. The battle is to restore a situation. It's not to win a particular argument on who was right and who was wrong. It is about restoration. So go into the situation prepared for both of those options. One is simply a door slam and no, pure rejection, and the other one is a willingness to listen. Don't expect an embrace, but expect a willingness. That's the best you can hope for. So already we can take control of them two scenarios. One is simply 100% rejection. The other one is at least a 50% willing to listen. Now, when you've made your apology, which is the action that you're trying to achieve, and you give them the gift, there's two things that will typically come to mind. You're either expecting to be embraced and accepted back, as with the prodigal son, or you're expecting perhaps the items to be thrown back in your face and a door to be slammed. But again, by knowing and expecting a reaction, we can then plan for the next action. Now, my advice in this situation was simply to restore communication. So my advice was to simply give the gift, and even if they say, thank you, would you like to come in? Your response will be, no, but thank you. Enjoy the gift, and we'll speak again soon. Option 2 is they're not happy about it, and they're going to send you on your way. And of course, exactly the same again. Thank you, I leave that with you. I understand how you feel. I'm just going to be my own way, and you know where I am if you want to contact me. Now, in both them scenarios, it results in you walking away. It results in you having initiated communication, and it also results in you having given a gift and an apology to go with that gift. Now, we all know that the biggest healer And in fact, the most important necessity we need is patience, because everything takes time. It takes time to process and digest. Now, the fact that such a big gesture will be so unexpected, and it will be seen as a sign of potential surrender, is something that's not normal to them. So they're going to have to go and digest it. They're going to have to think about it. And they're probably more likely going to be willing to open an actual proper communication dialogue after that. At the very least, at least you've managed to say your apologies, and you left in a more upstanding way of leaving a situation. You know, you've kind of tried to put right and done right by that person, and then that will be left where it is. Now, as I said, the only thing that is real control in all this is your reaction, your responses. To be prepared for rejection or to be prepared for acceptance is the key. Now, of course, the problem is, you could say, well, okay, well, what if they're absolutely over the moon and want to throw their arms around them and embrace them? Well, we talked about this in another episode the other day, that the problem is then, it's false. It's a false reaction. It's not a stable reaction. They may say something that leads to you saying something, and then everything spirals out of control again. It's much more important to have space and time for both of you to process the reaction. You would identify how that person accepted the gift, or if they've accepted your apology. You'd also be able to identify if there is another way back, if it was a pure rejection. And of course, if it was a pure rejection, then you know that you need to move forward. However, still leave that window of opportunity there, because that's what we were planning for. We were planning for controlling our response to a situation. In both outcomes, we can control that. An outburst of emotion, positive or negative, would not serve us in that situation. Better to be calm, smile, and walk away. Because another day is a better time to pick up where things were left off. So that's just a case study example of the things we have control of. So let me just break that down for you. We have control over our emotions, over our responses, over our actions. Remember, even now where you're sitting, if you look around the room, look at an object. Why is it there? Why is it not on your lap? Well, the reason is because you have not taken action, because you haven't made a decision to pick it up and move it. That is the external aspect of our control. We can make things move, but only when we change our perspective from the perspective. Change our perspective of the scenario as we see it. We kind of reframe it so that we can actually change our response and our action. So that's the main thing I want you to think about today, is to think about your responses and your actions in every situation. And if you plan for both, the positive and the negative, then you'll always come out in a position of regaining a sense of control in your life. The worst thing is when you go into a situation unprepared, and then you're forced into a corner where your emotions will simply rise up and take control. And then it's not so easy to fix. So, trust in the word of God. Take back control of your feelings and your reactions in your life. Move forward this week, knowing that God's grace is with you. God bless. If you were blessed by this video, why not give it a like? Also, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon to be notified of future videos.